It's Witcher season, and it's also the first video I'm going to do of the Witcher season 2, covering the first 4 episodes. I've had some people ask what I was going to do about this. Am I going to do a full video on the entire season? Am I going to do individual reviews of each episode, or just do 2 parts? One for the first half and one for the second half of the season. And I'm going with the latter option here. So this episode of The Real Hero Show will be covering episodes 1 through 4 of The Witcher, and I'll provide timestamps. So this being the intro for this video, if you want to skip this, by all means. But I'm going to say go ahead and like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for all of the videos I will release in the future. That being said, my goal here with this video is to maybe provide some insights on each of the episodes. Maybe there's something that you missed. I wouldn't be surprised if something I might have missed. Again, I've tried to be thorough enough to my own understanding and try to review and jot down some notes in the attempt of bettering to promote some sort of idea as to what these episodes are saying in this season overall. I'll state here that I have not read the books. I've played the games on PC numerous times, so which is why I fell in love with The Witcher in the first place. I also did watch, and we did cover the Netflix original anime of The Witcher that came out a few months ago, which was actually really good. If you haven't seen that, I would highly suggest you go watch that on Netflix. If you want to see what we talked about here on this channel, then you, by all means, go ahead. So to kick it off, episode 1 is entitled A Grain of Truth. And while the start, we're not too sure what this monster in the snow is, but we find out later on, of course, that it's a Bruxa, that Nivellen, who is actually Torvald from Game of Thrones, if you didn't know. And he's obviously done up a bit with his outfit, his attire, his makeup and prosthetics and stuff like that. But he's cursed, and he's got this magic house, essentially, where it's endless. He can have, trick knives come out of the sky, food, everything, right? He just has to look like Beauty and the Beast at one point. That reminded me of Beauty and the Beast when Ciri was sitting next to him, Cirilla, right? And I don't know why I thought that was kind of funny, but the other big thing here, and that's one of the major points of this season, is the post-battle of Sodden, right? There's 20,000 plus dead. Yennefer is believed to be missing, though we find out later on that she's alive. And one of the interesting points I think about this episode that I really liked was a lot of the conversations that was had between Geralt and Nivellen. Even at this point, Cirilla doesn't quite know the extent of who she is, that being she's still young and hasn't had proper guidance. And of course, because the law of surprise has essentially binded her with Geralt, there's a lot that should be uncovered over the course of these 8 episodes. And again, I think the interesting point of going with 8 episodes, where I've said this a couple of times on this YouTube channel about why studios and why production companies go with 8 episodes as opposed to 10, or maybe 10 as opposed to 12. And I think 8 is a solid number. I think sometimes, obviously, when you go less than that, it gets really hard. And I think that's one of the issues. I say issues, quote unquote, with the Marvel shows that have 6 episodes. People would want more of it and more from them. But some of the things that we've also seen from like Disney Plus, like Mandalorian, stuff like that, are 8 episodes. I think Witcher season 1 was 10. Correct me if I'm wrong. But to get back to this first episode here, there's an attack that Geralt is referring to, which comes from the animated movie, as he's explaining to Ciri about Kaer Morhen, which is the title of the second episode. You know, I thought for the most part this episode was pretty good. You know, Nivellen lies about the sound that's coming from the ceiling. He says it's a cat, and it's like, well, I thought you're supposed to live alone. Do pets count as living alone? But once we hear the story behind Verena, I have to say for that, like this almost looked like some sort of weird, you know, horror type moment. You know, something out of the not paranormal stuff, but something out of like Insidious or The Exorcist, right? Or that other movie called Mama. It's got like the horror type vibe where she's crawling on the ceiling on all fours. She's doing this like weird jittery motion, has like, you know, obviously a changed, you know, voice, you know, to her, to emphasize that she's obviously not human. And I think the creepiness was great. I think it was well done. And I think overall, just to kind of say this before, so I don't have to say multiple times over the course of this video, I think the production quality was a lot better this season than season 1. I feel like it even looks better on my 4K TV. Even though I know, you know, Netflix doesn't do true 4K, they do like UHD, but to me it looks a lot better than season 1. I don't know if that's just me imagining things or what, but you know, if you agree or disagree, go ahead and, you know, say, Nick, you're crazy and you need to get LASIK done, or I concur. I'll accept either comment. So the story is a bit of a love connection between Verena and Nivellen. You know, it doesn't seem like she might harm Ciri, but Geralt being Geralt and being a Witcher and slaying monsters is kind of his thing. So he's not going to leave her alive. The ironic part was that Nivellen, you know, ran her right through the chest with that spear, and she, you know, turns her head around and her arms around and starts, you know, pulling herself through the spike or spear to him, and then Geralt just offs her head, and Nivellen is sort of crying after that or yelling, and it's like, bro, you just ran her through. Would you expected her just to heal? I don't know if she would have healed from that or anything, but what's done is done, and you know, the curse is lifted. He turns back into human. He's mortal now, but he said, and Geralt says, "You're free." And the question is, but is he free? He's free from certain things. He's free from this curse. He's free from immortality, but now he has to accept mortality. And, you know, there's something that Geralt says is, you know, you're mortal, do it yourself. If he, you know, he says to take me as well. Geralt's not going to kill him. And it's not until the end that, you know, we see that Fringilla and Yennefer are alive. You know, with this crew of men, as Yennefer is bound, right? And after that point, I was like, well, what's going to happen to Yennefer since Fringilla isn't bound? Then they'll all get taken out, and which we find out what that is or who it is in the second episode. So I think it was a pretty good intro to the season. I think it established a good setting coming from the finale of season 1. I'm not going to really give it a rating. You know, I just want to say I think it was good. It was a good start. And again, I feel like after watching episode 1, it felt like, okay, we seem to be heading in a good direction. So let's just see how these next few episodes pan out. So episode 2, Kaer Morhen. You know, we see a lot more of Kaer Morhen itself. We see that Vesemir's there, which is great. And, you know, something that Ciri asks Geralt is, you know, how many witches are left? And he basically says, like, you know, less than 20, maybe, right? So if we're looking at less than 20, which we see we get a few names that are kind of becoming more common Witcher characters in this season, which is good because it kind of helps establish that they're all not wiped out, even though we know that they don't have the ability to create and mutate new Witchers. And I think the interesting thing about that too was when Eskel comes in, and he kind of seemed like the bit of the the troublemaker of the Witchers, and something he kudos to I guess whoever's acting him, the direction for him acting, because you could definitely tell that something was off about him. He wasn't normal even for a Witcher, and the other thing about Ciri being there, because she's not a Witcher and she's not pardon my French, but she's not a whore, and because we see whores show up later, right? So Geralt has to be reminded by his father figure, his mentor, his creator, Vesemir, that questions him about Ciri and reminds him the last time that they got involved with this sort of ordeal, with royalty and drama. Things didn't go that well for them. And Geralt obviously figures and wants to believe in not only trust himself, but to tell Vesemir that, hey, you can trust me. I know what I'm doing, or I'll do whatever needs to be done to make sure that doesn't happen. And because there's a party at Kaer Morhen, we find that Eskel has been infected by the Leshy that he rode in with the hand. And there were some jokes about him, having to fight this Leshy for 6 hours, and it's like, bro, you could have just shot a fire arrow or lit your sword on fire and stabbed it right through the heart, and it would have been GG. But he didn't do that, and which made me think, well, was it intentional, or did he just not do as good a job as maybe another Witcher could have? And I'm not going to say and compare Eskel to Geralt, even though I think we all know that Geralt is the far better warrior in Witcher between those two. But it's interesting because there's this little fight that breaks out, which I think I saw that clip premiere on the Graham Norton show when Henry Cavill was a guest there. So it wasn't necessarily ruined because we didn't get to see all of it, but seeing all of it and fluidity was pretty cool, right? Because we see Eskel make this full transformation into this Leshy creature, and Geralt tries to help Eskel, as Eskel basically wanted him to do it. He says, like, I wanted you to help. Or see if Geralt can help. And I think that struck a chord because he's his brother, right? And, Vesemir is there to rescue Geralt, but then Eskel comes back. There's, again, there's this moment where the father figure his life's in jeopardy as he's being strangled by Eskel, who isn't, the Leshy Eskel, we'll all say. And you can see in Geralt's face that he's struggling for this moment. Like, he wants to try and help Eskel, but he probably doesn't have the time. And they even say they didn't have the time to do it, because if Geralt doesn't take out Eskel right here in this moment, Vesemir is going to die. So it's tough to be in that situation for Geralt to choose. And obviously, I'd have to say I think he made the right decision to save Vesemir, and he lights his sword on fire, which is pretty cool. Effect reminded me of the episode in Game of Thrones as well, when the I can't think of the guy's name, but when the Paladin guy lights his sword up when they're surrounded by all the White Walkers to the north of the wall. and goes to that killing blow right where the heart was, much like Eskel should have done in the first place, and maybe he wouldn't have gotten infected. But what's done is done, and it's tough to kind of live with that, and we can see later on that it kind of carries along with Geralt, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So that's the one part of this episode. Meanwhile, we know that Fringilla and Yennefer have been taken by the elves, which was actually really cool and interesting to see. We know right away that Francesca, who's the leader of the elves, is not to be trifled with, as she just makes this one move, and then just like that, Fringilla just is out cold, and but the elves are there for a purpose. They're digging in the ruins. They're trying to find a new beginning for the elven race, and there's a talk of these dreams, and these dreams are important if you haven't picked up on that. The other important thing that I feel like is happening are the difference of dreams, right? Because Fringilla has a different dream, as does Yennefer and Francesca, and they're all with different people, which is, in my opinion, all one person, and just disguising itself to cause this confusion, cause this sort of witchery between them. And I don't think it's going to bode well no matter what, but I think Yennefer is the only one out of the three that is making the somewhat right and smart decision, even though as we find out once they go through these ruins here, they talk about the ruins that are on the wall, which is actually pretty cool. I thought, at least. The arrival of monsters. We've got the realms colliding, the conjunction of spears, and which I might, in my take, just means the conjunction of spheres, meaning worlds, as Earth is a world and Earth is round. Sorry, flat earthers, as are the other planets. So in that sake, same thing with realms. You've got a lot of the creation of worlds happening here, and as we've seen and heard through these four episodes. I want to see if it's Geralt even says, like, it seems like there are these new things that are happening in the world that are just overtaking what was already there, and it's almost like it's overwhelming for new things to be happening on an older philosophy of life that they're just used to. And it's sort of like just the evolution of things is moving at a faster pace that they're not able to really keep up with. But they get to, this house, which is, where the witch in the wood lives, and they all go through, again, these different visions, which, no pun intended of which, but the one thing I thought that was really interesting is when they all wake up and we hear that Fringilla is going with the elves, and says that after talking with Francesca, they agree that an alliance could be made, and between Nilfgaard and the elves, which as Yennefer says, well, that sounds awfully ambitious. That's not what you're really about. And she's like, well, my faith brought me here. And look, I think faith is important. I am a believer in faith. I think, it is a great thing to have faith. But I feel like that is one of the more interesting things that for them, for this ambition, that ambition can often be the opposite of faith. Like if you have faith that, and I'm more so for saying for Francesca's and Frangilla's sake, if they believe and that they have faith that they, the elves can become and start anew, especially since Francesca's pregnant, and that this young elven boy that she'll give birth to maybe is the hope, and that she has faith that this will deliver them to the new start. That's what faith is, right? But being ambitious is not a bad thing, and sometimes being ambitious, especially being overly ambitious, it can be troublesome. So I wonder, and again, we really haven't seen too much come from this, because at this point, which we find out, I think it's in the next episode here, that there is a little bit of an alliance that could prove to be worthy, especially with what seems like there's going to be another big battle on the horizon. So, and also, as we also find out that Yennefer doesn't have her powers, and I have to say that scream that she lets out, I'm a big fan of screaming and that type of music, metal, hardcore rock, all that stuff. So I dig the screams, but her scream was legit. I don't know that you thought so too, but she just let it out and go. And I was like, yo, can we just track that and put it on like a some heavy prog music real quick, because that's legit. And that's all I have to say about that episode. So episode 3, entitled "What is Lost?" So we see more of Geralt training Ciri, and Geralt mentions diminishing returns. Now, those of you who might not know what diminishing returns is, but if you've played any MMO, any RPG, tabletop, etc., you know what diminishing returns are. And Henry Cavill, being a big nerd, right? He plays Warcraft, Warhammer 40k, D&D. Like, I don't know if he came up with that, or if that was a line or what from the books, or they're just clever enough to go up with it. But I thought that was great. Yeah, and again, it might have just been a pure coincidence, but I think it was cool for someone like Henry Cavill to say those things, being who he is in real life. A little bit more about the other Witcher characters, like Mr. Lambert here, who seems to be an idiot, as Ciri says. He's actually also bitter for Geralt killing Eskel, right? And this is the part where it starts to weighs on Geralt. And Witchers aren't supposed to feel emotions, right? Like, why grieve for killing Eskel when it wasn't really Eskel as he was infected, and he was basically a Leshy at that point. I think you could be upset or grieve for the fact that your friend was infected by this, but at the same time, I would have a little bit of a talk with Lambert, though he doesn't. And again, you can see where it's weighing on Geralt. He sees like this, vision in one of the hallways. It's obviously like a memory that he has of when they were talking about training and stuff like that, which was cool, because it also shows a little bit of a lighter side to Eskel, that he was a bit of a character, and I'm guessing that's pretty much all we'll see of that character. The other part that we find out from Tissaia, she thinks that Yennefer is dead at this point, even though not too long after that, maybe shortly thereafter, Yennefer returns to Aretuza, and so all the other girls see her, Tis sees her, and Tissaia, that is, but Yennefer's asked to lay low, and of course that's okay, because she doesn't have her powers, so she can't really cause any sort of chaotic ruckus, right? And the other interesting part about the in this episode is that we hear that monoliths are the key of the future, and we know that more in the next episode. And I'll talk about that, and then in relation to what happens. Those of you will probably remember in the first season here. Moving back to Kaer Morhen, I actually liked this whole segment where Lambert and Cohen essentially take Ciri for some advanced training tactics, and it's this intense course, which almost seems like one of the ninja courses that running and jumping and, making sure you don't get hit and knocked off things. But the idea of Ciri being a smaller person and it's cold, high up, the elevation is higher up. There are these, giant wooden beams with metal on them that, they don't look comfortable whatsoever. She gets knocked off, but she keeps getting up again. I'm not going to sing that song, so don't expect that from me. Plus, I don't want to get a DMCA strike. So, eventually, she makes it through the course, right? Time and time again. And then, it's when Geralt comes and is just kind of looking there, almost like he's proud of her, right? And she gets and you can see that when Ciri sees Geralt is there, she's like, I can do this. And like, even now that Geralt's there, I have to do this. And then she's one step away for the gold medal to stick the landing. She gets to the platform, but then falls off and then spits up some blood. And I'm like, damn, she's still bleeding and she's spitting up blood, which we'll talk to in just a second yet again. But Geralt comes up and says, so close. And it's kind of, I don't know if she would have laughed about that, but I laughed because, why is the landing important? Because it's the landing. If that were a narrow cliff or something along those lines where you're not falling off into the snow, you're falling off to your death, that probably would have mattered. So there is an importance behind that. That's why, even though she got through, you don't stick the landing. You're going to lose points on that. And obviously to all the Witchers there, they just weren't that impressed. I think they were, but they weren't because she didn't stick the landing. And there's talk about the pull. What's drawing her, from all this, her premonitions, these visions, this foresight that she gets, right. And it leads them into the woods, like literally to the very point, of where Eskel, fought the Leshy, because we can see that it's missing like an arm. And then it takes notice of the two, and Geralt starts to fight it, but then it gets killed, gets yeeted from behind, or ganked, I would say is the proper word, ganked from behind by a insect-looking, goat-headed, multi-armed centipede monster. Goes after them, seems to be kind of scary. Knocked, Geralt back. Ciri runs off, gets cornered, but it doesn't quite attack her yet. And I don't know, again, you wouldn't really want to give it the time of day to see if it does or it doesn't, but it seemed like there was a slight hesitation for it attacking her, as it very well could have just killed Ciri against the rocks, but Geralt comes in and just slices it in half, cuts it down, cuts its head off, and that's that. And I was like trying to see if there was a name for this monster, and I couldn't find anything for it. So at least my attempts, I couldn't find anything for it. But I'm sure it might get mentioned, even though I feel like it's some sort of new conjured monster. Then again, it looked really cool. I think so far the monsters and creatures we've seen thus far have been pretty legit. Again, the production value seems pretty high up there, and pretty well done with the CGI effects. So, but going back to Aretusa, with the girls, Triss doesn't join them in the spring, and I think it's because she doesn't feel anything yet. She might be too, I don't say ashamed, but just from the battle is this sort of PTSD type thing. The scars that she has are just too much for her to bear. And it's quite an interesting talk, I think, between Yennefer and Triss, because it seemed pretty wholesome as to what they've been through. And even though Triss sort of reveals her pain, Yennefer doesn't, because I think she's ashamed up to this point, and I'm maybe not ashamed, but just embarrassed. And it sucks, for what she did, even though she's like the hero of Sodden. But Tissaia knows that Yennefer has lost her magic. And, there's the talk about what is going to happen to Yennefer. What's it going to take to get her powers back? Does she get her powers back? Because then there's this prisoner that is tortured by Tissaia, and she detects that there's this magical barrier in his head that's really preventing her from actually getting in there. Getting her getting into his head fully and uncovering all these secrets, which we find on the next episode that as the prisoner tells Yennefer that what if she did? So we know that she didn't. But that was a question. I'm like, why can't she? What sort of barrier is this that's so well protected that even someone as strong as Tissaia can't break in? So the real test, not just for him to kind of go through with it, because he really has no choice as being a prisoner, is Yennefer. The test is for Yennefer. Will she behead this prisoner? And obviously she doesn't. She cuts, mostly cuts, but slices those locks off, the chains off of his hands. He runs away. She cuts down the two fires in a pyre there, and so it all comes kind of crumbling down. And I don't know about you guys, but it almost seemed like Tissaia had a bit of a smirk on her face. Like she was almost like I'm glad you did that. Like it almost seems like she wanted Tissaia wanted Yennefer to do that, to get out of there, because of Stregobor, who, earlier on, a bit of a pervert, right? He tries to torture. It was kind of cool the way it happened, because he just touches her, and there's just this weird scene that automatically he gets in her head, and he's torturing her like she's locked down in the chair, and he's doing the same move that Stregobor is doing the same move to Yennefer in trying to get into her head as Tissaia did to the prisoner. And it seems like Stregobor is able to find out some information about where she was, who she was with, what's it mean. But again, thankfully Tissaia intervenes and just blasts Stregobor back, and then says there's going to be repercussions for it. Well, we haven't seen those repercussions for it, so I'm really wondering if Stregobor will make it out of this season alive. Again, I'm not too sure where this is in the books, or if it's the same, or if it's different, or if he makes it or not. But I kind of feel like Tissaia is going to end Stregobor at some point, or maybe if Yennefer gets her powers back, that she's just going to yeet him out of existence, which would be fine. I'd be okay with that. So, again, overall, I think leading up to this point and where the story is heading, I'm more intrigued, right? And again, looking forward to this 4th episode entitled Redanian Intelligence. So Ciri continues training. There's the moment where Ciri fell down in the snow, is important, because we find that Triss was invited by Geralt to help with Ciri's training. And um, I thought that was pretty interesting because it seemed to happen pretty quick. So we didn't really get an actual timeline as to how much time has taken place between Triss being there at Aretuza and then on this path going to Kaer Morhen. But she just happened to be in the right place at the right time to come face to face with Ciri, and then obviously Geralt being there. Finding a wild boar, not a monster. But when they go back to Kaer Morhen, it kind of seems like there's it's a joke, and because the women are, I think Lambert says the women are doubling by the day here. Which look, it kind of seemed like it was a little bit better, a little bit more cozy in there. Not a bunch of testosterone. But you got a princess and then sorceress there. So, I mean, look, I'm okay with that. And it actually bodes well for why that is, as we find out in this episode. There's a point that I want to say in this episode of normalcy, when Triss points out that the Witchers feel normal things, even though they pretend to not feel normal things, right? As Triss is saying, like, you feel normal sadness, normal anger, normal everything. And she asked Geralt to stay the night with her and just stay the night, no knocking boots or anything like that. But he still refuses not to. And I kind of thought a couple things, like maybe Geralt didn't want her to get into his mind. But I also think it was wise of him to not really give that impression to her, as he, states later on that I'm not what you're looking for, and I think it was a very wholesome moment between Triss and Geralt. Like, she says that she was able to feel again after feeling Geralt's pain, and it's even though some wounds won't ever, or can't be healed, it seems like most of hers have. And I think just by being there, seeing Geralt, knowing more, feeling more, was able to sort of push him in that direction and really kind of get to that point where she is starting to feel like her old self again. And I think Triss being there makes it more impactful, not for the Witcher, not for the Witchers altogether, but also for Ciri, as she tries to, mentor her a bit more. They, Cohen and Lambert make fun of Ciri for trying to look nice, right, and do her hair, put a little flower in her hair. It seems like she's taking care of her clothes, and and they make her feel unspecial, like she is, running away, and she's like kind of like messing with her hair, like I made it look nice, and now people are just making fun of me, and because they're just a bunch of dumb drunken Witchers, and Triss puts them in their place, and so it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys don't even give her soap, but you're sitting here, with your piss-stained clothes, and you're giving her mushrooms, and, you're not helping her out with her, since she's, her blood once per month, which we all know what that is. But it kind of makes them all feel bad. And look, I know they're not used to having women there, but at the same time, non-whorish women there. But Geralt comes back to the laboratory and says, "Oh, they felt bad. Here's some bread." Right? It's like you break bread with them and call it forgiveness. And but that was a pretty important moment because they find that there is still a site inside the new unnamed creature. Not only that, but it was this. They also found stellacite in Eskel's lechi, and the one that he cut off. And the key is the monolith. And just before that, in the previous episode, we heard that monoliths are the key to the future. And it's another part of this episode which goes back to season 1, where Ciri, tells them that outside of Sintra is where she saw the monolith fall. Not only did she see it, but she was the causation behind it, right? And at that moment, there's this, vision of, the background's all red, chaotic, weird, dark voices that going on in her head, and it says the daughter of chaos belongs to us. Join the procession. There's only death here, and kind of messed up. But at the same time, it made her pass out, and then she wakes up, and Geralt says he'll fix what's going wrong. It definitely seems like it's a bit of a father figure again, right? Like he's saying, well, this girl who's essentially like an adopted daughter, at least that's how it almost seems, right? That he'll fix it, even though he's the protector. And it was very interesting because Triss knows someone who studies monoliths in Sintra. The gentleman we saw in episode 3, Istred. Forgot how they pronounce his name, but he's one of the mages that we see in the library that Geralt is teleported to. Geralt's like, I know who you are. He's like, right, but who the fuck are you? And Geralt's like, oh boy, I gotta explain who I am, what I'm doing here, and how I got here. So that'll be really interesting. And I have some questions that I'll propose if you've all made it this far, right at the end of this, because I just want to touch up on the flip side of this episode, right? There's some shady stuff going on with Dijkstra. I don't know what his motive is. He's talking through the owl to, the priestess of some kind. So it looks like he's like just a pawn, who's working with His Highness. There's the talk about taking over Sintra, to be smart about it, and really curious to see how that plays out, because again, I feel like there's going to be another big battle, and it might take place in Sintra this time, and it might involve the elves and Nilfgaard again. So that'll be pretty interesting. The other part of this episode, which was taking place in Gorsvellen, treating the elves like complete shit, beating them, making them piss their pants, locking them up. It's just, the oppression is real against the elves here, and which is pretty interesting too, because meanwhile you've got this alliance that some people know about and some people don't. So it'll really be interesting to see how it all pans out at the end of this season. But we hear and see that there's a certain someone, the Sandpiper, who turns out to be our favorite bard, Jaskier, who's back and singing a sad song about the witcher that burned him. So he's still got some hurt feelings about Geralt and what happened in season 1. And I think for the sake of what is happening with the elves that are, it's got this like Underground Railroad type feeling to it, where you've got the elves who are, being held captive or slaves to an extent, and they're getting out on a boat, and that the Sandpiper, the bard, Jaskier, is the one that really helps export them out. And one of the elves, Balian, I think his name was, who is a bit of a coward when they're in the sewers. But he makes, he finds redemption. Again, pardon my French, but he says, fuck the North numerous times and does it and gets, I think, beat to death, if I had to say so. And it's also they can escape and get on the boat. And while they're there's a pretty, good conversation between Yennefer and Jaskier. And just as Jaskier leaves, you kind of hear his can't think of his the name of his instrument, his guitar. I'm gonna call it. I know it's not a guitar, but it makes a noise as if someone's broken it, and Yennefer wants to take a look, realizes that it's smashed, and Jaskier's not there. And Cahir, who's the prisoner from Aretuza, he's like, we need to get out. This is for us. We need to get the hell out of here. And it's kind of like being selfish. But it's not just them. It's the other elves that are there to get out. And they need to get to Sintra. So, I think for the sake of the way this is going with this episode, we're at the halfway point. Things are pretty tense between the alliance that's happening, the deceit that's coming from Dijkstra, Yennefer not having her powers still. Is the alliance going to pay off? Will there be another huge battle? The couple other things I liked about this episode, we got the mentioning of dwarves twice. Will we see dwarves? I want to see a dwarf, damn it. And I think the other part, the way this episode ends essentially, is with Vesemir finding, I'm going to screw the pronunciation of this up, but Fianwed, the purple flowers. And he shows Triss, and it says, it only grows where elder blood has been spilt. And it was found on the Killer Trail training course, the course that Cirilla was on, and she fell and hit her face on when, right after that, Triss approaches her. And elder blood is basically, a legendary key ingredient for the first mutations in creating the Witchers, and it hasn't been there in generations. And my question is this: will Ciri be the next Witcher, or the first of the next Witchers, or will they just use her blood and create more mutagens and then start to find and make more Witchers? The other thing is this: she spit her blood out numerous times up where the obstacle course was. So there should be flowers up there as well. And if there's not, I kind of want to say that might be just, they missed out on something then. So we'll find out. We don't know at this point, but I don't know if Jaskier is alive or dead. He might have been taken captive. Not too sure. And the other thing I think is very odd, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but Triss has not told Geralt. Why would I say Geralt? Geralt, that Yennefer is alive. Triss has not told Geralt that Yennefer is alive. Very odd, because I think that Triss would have known that he cares for her, even though there seems to be been a little bit of a thing between Triss and Geralt, a long time ago. But so maybe it was intentional. I don't know how long you guys, if you've watched all of The Witcher season 2 already, then you might know when it happens or if it happens. But I kind of think up to this point, I've only watched up to episode 4, by the way. So I wanted to just record this long video. Sorry about the length, but I think it won't be till like episode 7 or 8 until Geralt actually sees that she's alive. So, but we'll see. I think that there could be a lot of cool things that happens this season. Again, I'm not too sure how all this lines up with the books, but up until this point, I'm pretty intrigued. I think so far they've done a better job with the storytelling, the parts, the different ongoing threads through this season with the different characters than they did in season 1. So overall, I think that this I'll say this through these 4 episodes, I'll give it an 8 out of 10 through these 4. Not just for the sake of the acting, the story, the cool effects, the production, where it's going. It's generating some questions that I hope they provide answers for, and it's not like they're just kind of going off in some crazy direction. It all seems like it's connected, and it all seems like they're really creating and conjuring an actual, good season and good story. So if you've only watched up to this point, you haven't finished binging the entire season yet, and you wanted to see what I had to say about these 4 episodes, go ahead and leave a comment below. I will be doing a second half review for The Witcher, and so if you want to just wait till then, by all means. I'll try to get it out before Christmas. That is my goal. Got some other things to watch as well, such as The Wheel of Time, Dexter New Blood. I've got The Matrix to watch, and the finale of Hawkeye. So I've got 4 other things that I need to watch and record before Christmas Eve, technically for me. But again, if you've watched it, made it all the way through, thank you so much for taking the time, even if you're just listening to this in the background while you work or do some chores or whatever it happens to be. I really do appreciate all the support. Again, subscribing really helps me and helps grow this channel. I appreciate everyone that does so for free. And again, just pressing that thumbs up button lets me know that you like the video. And also lets me know, lets the YouTube algorithm know that you guys like this video and like this content. So, again, leave all comments below. And until next time, I'll catch you guys on the next Witcher video. Cheers.